So hanging out and breathing, letting the weight go, maintaining structure, releasing the abdomen, and letting the mind roam through the body, noticing any places of tension, and consciously releasing those places, especially on the out breath. And then specifically centering our attention, gathering our energy deep into the core. And again, releasing tension on the out breath. And every wave of release, see if you can find or intend corresponding clarifying, emptying, structurizing. Breathing out, releasing, breathing in is an opening, a clarifying. Letting the arms hang. Letting the arms slightly swing. Letting them just hang loose and swing naturally, just ever so slightly. Feeling the very fingertips, the weight entering into the fingertips. And feel that opening, softening in the hands also occur in the feet. And again, whatever allowance of sinking through the lower body, anchoring to the ground, grounding through the lower body. See if you can find an equivalent releasing and lengthening in the upper body. So the yin in the lower body and the yang in the upper body. Noticing whatever releasing, grounding, letting go, whatever you can notice the lower body. See if you can connect that consciously to a lengthening, emptying, opening in the upper body. So they're, again, the yin-yang pair. The yin, the letting go, the releasing, hanging down, grounding, that's a non-doing. You kind of hang out, you allow, and notice, you ting, or notice what releasing, dropping there is. And that's the non-doing that happens. Just happens when you set up the right conditions. And then the doing part is translating that to a corresponding lengthening, erecting, emptying in the upper body. So it's a yin-yang pairing. And Tai Chi is really fundamentally about not just yin yang, but more actively yin yang pairing, or the activity, the two different activities at once.
Mm.
And it creates a much more dynamic quality and feeling. And it's what generates qi. There's a qi that we already have in our body. But when you have yin yang pairing actively, it generates more qi.
Mm.
So once we have enough kind of room in our brain where we can start to work with these principles, that gets much more active and available. Being able to kind of do two things at once, being aware of two things at once, the non-doing aspect, and that creates something that can be done. So in this case, lower body, upper body, releasing, emptying, allowing gravity to work. And when you can feel that downing, if you keep if you keep the awareness very, very fine and alert, you can find a corresponding lengthening and opening. At first, it's a matter of intending that down and then finding how down is a support to erecting, aligning, opening. And eventually you find how that yin creates the yang on its own. It makes So when I hang out, when I release the weight through my legs and feet, if my awareness is fine enough, if I'm there waiting, present and waiting, there's an automatic, again, lengthening and aligning, structurizing in the upper body. So I don't have to hold myself up and open. I'm opened, I'm held, I'm lengthened. All I really have to do is allow and find that dropping and that releasing. And that automatic pairing becomes automatic. That pairing becomes automatic. That lengthening, opening happens for me. So again, down is primary, yin is primary. And once our Ting becomes fine enough, we find the corresponding result, effect.
And would you, when you talk about it, it's funny because I wanted to talk tonight about yin and yang more, so it's perfect timing. So would you say then that like when you talk to that, I can feel it? And is that what you take into the set of Tai Chi, is to have that pairing for the duration of the set?
Yes. Yes is one answer.
Okay.
Yes, but not necessarily all the time.
Okay.
So that brings up an interesting concept as well. So let's talk about that concept in general and come back to yin and yang.
Okay.
So in general, this idea of bringing something into the set. Okay, so this is a big important subject. So when you do the set per se, when you're not doing the set, we have all kinds of individual Tai Chi exercises and Qigong / Tai Chi exercises. We have conditioning exercises. We have warm-up Tai Chi exercises. We have conditioning exercises. And then we have the set. Now, when you do the set, there's very, very generally speaking, there's two ways of doing the set.
Oh, okay.
You can go into the set with a particular focus in mind, a particular drill or principle that we've been working on, and you take that into the set. So you take that training into the set.
Right.
And then the other approach is you just do the set. You just hang out and some people use the phrase, play Tai Chi. You just play Tai Chi. I don't particularly like that phrase, but a lot of people use that phrase. And also another related phrase people often call people that do Tai Chi players.
Oh, okay.
Different terms in different circles. And so that other concept, other way of approaching doing the set is when you do the set, you just hang out, breathe, flow through the set, forget about everything, and don't get caught up in doing. So
Mm.
there's value in that for sure, because we don't always be caught up in doing and trying, and so that gets a bit too much to that one side, a yang side, doing, efforting, concentrating. So there's value to both for sure. So you have one where you're taking specific conscious training into the set, and then the other approach is not trying to do anything in particular. You're just hanging out, flowing, just doing it for the enjoyment, and just relaxing and allowing ease to occur, just being easeful. So that certainly has value. So then the question becomes, because both have value, so how often do you do each?
Mm.
Percentage of the time do you do each? So this can vary totally, completely according to the individual and according to the time in your training, where you're at,
Oh,
how long you've been training, or just the phase that you're in.
yeah.
So some people, so I mean, it can vary from 50% of the time. 50% of the time you are focusing on something in the set and working on something. And that can be more than one thing, but you're working on one or more things. And then the other 50% of the time you're just hanging out and letting go of all that trying and efforting and just easing through the set, flowing through the set. So it could be 50-50. It could be 75% of the time you are drilling, you're focusing on something. 25% you're just hanging out and flowing, or it could be the other way around. 25%, only 25% you're focusing on something, and 75% most of the time you're just hanging out and flowing. So in general,
Mm.
so certainly you have that choice, that option of how you're using the set and what you're being like in the set. So that you can take it day by day even. Like, what do I feel like now? For example, if it's a day where, gee, it's important for me to do a set, but kind of day I've had, I don't think I do that well in focusing on something. My mind is feeling either tired or weak or just really, frustrated or what have you. I just maybe feel that I won't I won't serve myself that well, or the set won't serve myself that well in the state that I'm in if I'm trying to focus on a particular thing and trying to do something. I might just
Right.
realize that I'd be better served if I just kind of hang out, relax, and let it move me and just have a more passive experience with the set.
Right.
So you can take that day by day. But overall, there should be a strategy, a formula of an idea of how you're approaching the set. So again, that's individual, and philosophically there can be differences, and it depends again on where a person's at, not only in their training but in their life and what's going on.
Right.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
and so as far as yin yang, bringing yin yang into the set, so that fits right under that category. Depends on what you're deciding to do the set. When you are consciously working on things in the set, and if it's the yin yang aspect, there's many, many, many different yin yang pairings, many different kinds. And in fact, the last class that we were on, we talked about the yin yang pairing of
Yeah.
out. And again, those distinct yin yang pairings, I find they're very, very vibrant. Now, it doesn't mean all of them, everybody can click into and tune into and get it right away. But when you can click into those yin yang pairings, they're very invigorating, they're very vibrant. And again, they generate chi.
And see, last week, and it's funny because I saw Cheryl the other night because we worked on some Feldenkrais, some of her, I'm acting as a student for, well, a guinea pig, I guess. But we both talked about that class because it was interesting for me because you've said different things around that. We've done some of the similar exercises, but in that time, and expanding out and down. And I've had so much tightness in, into my upper thigh, and I really felt emptiness there. Excuse me. Which was, I felt that expansion and that emptying in a way that I would not have ever felt before. Like especially in the front, to have that sense of no tightness and openness, it was quite significant and really nice, because it felt like my pelvis is moving towards a letting go. And in that moment, it really clicked. So that was kind of cool.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
So in instances like that, it can be worthwhile to take that kind of thing into a set
Mm-hmm.
and for a period of time. Now, typically what happens is when you have a pretty lucid experience and a dramatic experience like that, it doesn't mean it's going to be there like that the times after.
Again, yeah.
It might simply be just a slight residue of that experience. And it might even be just an intellectual memory.
Mm.
But that's still something to work with. So for a period of time, you can choose to take that into either individual Tai Chi moves or the set itself. Certainly that's something that I do, is I take those different themes, especially when there's been a very impactful experience. I'll take that into the set and kind of massage that experience into and through the set. And of course, it's again quite normal that it's not going to be as acutely intense as that first experience, but you can still kind of you can work the peripherals of that experience and get that into the tissues and into the cells to a certain degree.
Right. Because the thing is, now there's now that memory does exist now in my body.
Exactly.
Which is really exciting, because, and as we've talked about with Cheryl, in fact, that introduction of a possibility that was not necessarily there before. I mean, now it's possible.
Exactly. Right.
Which is very, very cool, right?
And as you say, it's not only a memory, it's an experience. It's a memory. It's a memory of memory. And so the cells know it.
Yeah. Hey?
So that's a definite seed that's germinating as we speak. And so that's why when you're doing exercises or the set and you're endeavoring to touch that again, you are watering that seed, raising the ground around that seed. So just like we don't see a seed, we don't notice the seed grow day by day. One day you look at it, 2 days later, oh my goodness, it's real. You can't track it day by day. You can't track that germination. But down the road, months or years, it's like, oh my goodness, now I can just think of that and I can access it.
Yeah.
So those are things that are worthy to consciously work on and with. So taking that into a set is a really good thing to do, especially because the main set we do is the traditional long set. So you have a good period of time, and also through many different shapes, to work on something. So it's enough time, enough variability that you can make real change and real observations. Just kind of a side note on that, and I think I may have mentioned this to you before, that I would do the same thing with not these physical things that we usually work on, but with philosophical glimmerings, insights, and ideas, and take them into the set and be empty and open. So this is Yin Yang pairing as well. Empty and open, but also just letting this philosophical idea or concept be hanging in the energy, hanging in the mind, hanging in the energy. And without exception, by the time I got to the end of the set, there were realizations, understandings, insights that would just bubble up. That would not have occurred without that cultivating a time spent with the set. So it can be mental aspects, it can be philosophical aspects as well. But that's great to hear. So you've had this experience. Now it's this organic memory that's there, and you can coax that. You can
Yeah.
nurture that
Yeah.
in everything that you do. Um, yeah. So, any other specific questions about that situation that you experienced, or anything?
Um, well, I think, when you talk about that pairing of the yin and yang, and I think, I've been so contracted for such a long period of time, that, now it'll be 2 years in February that I started Tai Chi. And so it sort of speaks to what you're saying. I can go back and look at, where I was at, even just attempting to try something new and in a different environment, and how I held myself. And it's been, quite a journey around that, because my body has changed, and I am, you know, more open, I think, in more than one way. And then now that pairing, as you've talked about, and even just when we just did that set, when we talk about our own chi, which I feel, um, and then more so when I just take a moment to be still and quiet and to go to that Ting place. But when you do that pairing, it really does ramp it up. And, it's, I guess, where to do that. It's like, you could be in the boardroom doing it, but, so it's interesting to sort of now have that combination is a whole new thing again, right? So
Yeah, and so that's great that you're really experiencing a strong response and able to,
mm-hmm,
because it is extremely potent and dynamic and
mm-hmm.
uh, altering, changing, transformative. So maybe let's work with this a little bit more, and we can even bring this into the pelvic floor area as well. It's one of
And
those
can
things.
I ask, sorry, can I ask one more question since I've got you? But yes, I'd love to do that. So how is it then for me when I have experienced that in and up contraction, but so this was the question, but yet the sinking down is yin as well. So I've got that in tightness contraction, but the releasing down is more of a yin, and the yang is up. Or is that a different play with yin and yang then?
Different play with yin and yang. So
Okay.
there's an infinite different use of yin and yang pairing. Yes, in is yang and flowing out. In is yin and flowing out is yang. And so we can use yin and yang in very, very, very different contexts, where the down, flowing down, the releasing down is yin. And so it's a positive thing that we want to cultivate.
Yeah.
That's the yang in the yin. It's positive. It's a positive yin. So that's a yang yin. When we have contraction, in and contraction is yin, and that's a
Yeah.
negative. So
Yeah.
that's a yin
Okay.
yin. That's a yin
That's
yin.
a negative yin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this is really interesting. So this leads us into further concepts and useful practical ideas. We don't want to, it's called double yin or double yang. We don't want double yin or double yang. Here,
Mm.
so that was double yin.
There's no
In,
balance there then, I guess. No harmony.
um, here's another, okay, so here's a basic good yin yang pairing that we want. And we talked about this recently and relates to what we've been saying tonight as well. The tissues, the soft part of the body, are yin, and they should be yinning. They should be hanging and dissolving, dripping
Uh,
down, melting down. And the bones inherently
go up.
are yang, and they go up.
Right.
So we have the yin yang pairing, yin yang
Pairing.
differential.
Right.
By the way,
Right.
one of the reasons why I feel that it the only reason why I think it's so potent in generating chi, although I like that word generizing, I like that. I'll use that again. Is that it's almost like friction. You know, you develop energy and heat through friction, right? And
Right.
with that particular yin yang pairing, it is like that kind of internal friction that creates that energy. The tissues are hanging, drooping, melting down, and the bones are very upright, very bright, and very erect. And
Mm.
distinction creates almost like a friction that really creates energy. So a double yin, which we don't want, would be the tissues are hanging and the bones are slumping.
Right.
Double yang, which we don't
Oh,
want,
it's the other way.
other way where the
God,
bones are up, but the muscles
they're
are
up,
tight,
tense up.
tension up.
Right.
So double
And
yang,
that's a yin. Is that a double yang?
because up is yang.
Because up is yang.
Yeah.
Ah, but the muscles, which could you okay? Okay.
Double yin we don't want.
Right.
So generally speaking, is that differential, that distinction that creates life. Creates life.
Mm.
Yin yang creates life, right? When it's dynamic, and if we have yin
Mm-hmm.
and yang by itself, it's dead.
Right.
And if it's a yin yang symbol, just a black and white symbol on a flat sheet of paper, it's just one dimensional, two dimensional. It's not moving, it's static, it's dead. Yin yang is about the interaction
The interaction
and
and the flow and the yeah, it's
movement,
fluid.
interchange. So going double yang would be like that, the yin yang symbol turning into a white blob with very little
Mm.
yin. Or double yin would be like that yin yang symbol turning into a black blob with just a little bit of white or just a kind of a grayish white, and it's almost all yin. So
Mm. Well, that helps clear that out because my mind couldn't quite place that, you know, but now it makes sense. And it's yeah, and the differential and the pairing of it, which
it's the
so I
pair.
gotta explore pairings then.
Yeah. So let's explore pairings, and I kind of also want to put this in the back of our mind. This will help with the pelvic floor. It'll help with everything, but specifically, we use that as an example, the pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the pelvic floor, you can't make relax. Just like,
Right.
you know, I was just hearing just the other day, you know, this very obvious truth. You know, we tell someone to relax, relax. That very rarely works, right? You got to relax more, relax.
It's irritating to hear that.
So, yes, actually. So, and even to ourselves, we have a very limited degree to which we can just make
Yeah.
ourselves relax. You can do it to
Right.
a degree, especially if you have techniques, you work with those techniques. So you can develop skills and abilities. But what works profoundly effectively is you don't try to do that thing, that particular thing. You do something else that is connected to that thing, that the result of doing this thing over here creates this nice result, this nice effect.
Oh.
So there's certain things that we do, and it creates certain effects and results. And those are the benefits, and those are the rewards. That's the goal, those are the diamonds.
Mm.
Things that we try to do and we work on, and other things that we don't really want to try to work on directly, but they open like a flower. It's like trying to open up a flower mechanically, and you're going to destroy the flower. You're going to break the flower.
Right.
And even if you don't damage it too much, it's not going to be ripe. It's not going to be ready to be open. It's going to be, you know, brittle. It's not going to be a full flower.
Right.
But if I do the indirect things, like water it, fertilize it, give it sunlight, that flower just happens. So that's the cultivation process of Tai Chi. There's certain things that we do, We're able to add the water, apply the sunlight, good nourishing soil. There's certain things that we can do. And those are the conditioning exercises and the opening exercises and the releasing exercises. And the releasing down, letting gravity work. Those are things that we can do. And there's a result that happens. There is a blossoming that occurs in it. And to tell you the truth, a lot of these things the things that occur, these results, really feels like an inner blossoming. It's a vibrant arising of energy. And it's just like a living flower inside that's opening and triggered to open. So just like you can't make yourself relax, but if you practice weight underside and letting the weight go, we find the body responds and it's softer, more relaxed than it was a few seconds ago when we were trying to make it relaxed. So there's things that we can do that create these results, and specifically Tai Chi results. So with the pelvic floor, for example, you don't have to address the pelvic floor directly, and you don't have to try to make the pelvic floor release and relax. All we have to do is get better at dropping, hanging, and at first intending that correlation, as I started today with, if you can get that relaxing down, hanging out, and then intend that down creates an opening and emptying and expanding, that's a start. But when you can start to be able to have a sense of enough inner Ting, inner awareness, and inner connection, that dropping is the opening. That hanging, that dropping, that's sending down, the releasing down, the dropping, there's an echo. It's related to the ground force, so something a little bit more mechanical that we work with. As you're releasing to the ground, pressing to the ground, there's a pushing back. There's a pushing back, the ground pushes back, and that's why we move. That's why there's a weight shift. That's why there's a hip turn. So that's a physical corollary. I press down, so the doing is pressing down. Okay, so let's go back again to another simple analogy of doing and not doing. And so the thing that we do in terms of weight shift, but on the very physical level of weight shifting, the doing part is pressing down. Pressing down, I don't have to do the weight shift or the hip turn, but the doing that I have to do is the pressing down. The pressing down, and then the non-doing is I get moved. So do this and doing this part to get this action here. So that's a very simple example of you do certain things and other things then happen for you. A very, very simple, very mechanical example. But I can use this example as well as it gets always more and more fine, more and more subtle, and more yin yang intertwined. So the doing is pressing down, right? But as you also hear me say sometimes, even better than pressing down is releasing down. So that's less doing, right? That's less doing. So pressing down is doing this, right? But I also want to get more subtle at the doing. I want to do less doing of the doing. So everything becomes more and more subtle and more yin. So pressing down, pushing down is doing. But of course, people are being contractive about that to some degree, because if I use that word push, of course, pushing, pressing, even in that word, there is a sense of grunting, right? A sense of doing. So that's just a start. Really what I want is not a pressing, because again, there's instinctual contraction in that. I want a releasing, a letting go. I want to release, a letting go, and the weight just falls. And if I set up the structure, the weight just falls, I set up the structure and I get moved. So now I have to have original intent, that little spark of intent to allow that to fall, allow it to release and fall. So there's some intent there still.
Excuse me.
Not that crude push down and I get the yin response, the non-doing response is being pushed back. So I become more subtle and less yang about that, and more non-doing. I just release, I let go, I just hang, I just free fall the way through. And I have to have again enough doing of structurizing so that that release sends an echo back through my body. So part of why I started this out with was ground force. Pressing down, we're pushed back by the ground. Literally, the ground is pushing back. And the more I push into the ground, of course, the more the ground pushes back. And if that wasn't the case, then the ground would depress. If I was pushing more than the ground is pushing back, then I'd be pushing deeper and deeper into the ground. So whatever I press down with, I'm getting ground force back. And as I, again, open the body, become more transparent, become more porous, transparent, emptier in the body, it takes less of a pulse. And that physical ground force, it just can be an echo, just an echo of energy returning back. And that's all I need to move me back. And then eventually, and we touched upon this actually the very last class where I was saying not to move, we're in a bracket, where this takes further emptying the body, conditioning and clarifying the body and making the body transparent. Pressing down, I can let that reverberate through my body, a wave coming through my body without moving at all. So there's this echo. But it's a enlivening, clarifying, informing echo. It moves through your body, less substantial than the ground force pushing you back. It is an echo of energy. And you start to use that return wave, that echo, as what makes your structure aligned and vertical. So you don't have to hold yourself up anymore. You do have to have the awareness, and it takes quite a subtle awareness in her Ting to open things up and allow things to drop and allow the ground to echo back and allow that force to echo up through your body. So first you need a very, very fine awareness, but you also have to be cultivating the body to be more and more empty, more and more transparent so that it can make its way through. Most people's body, of course, is very, very dense and coarse. And so even if they did have, they just can't allow that force to move through the body. It's like you send a sonar echo through very thick mud. Instead of water, it's very, very murky water or mud. And so that sonar, the waves of the sonar just can't get through. If that water is cleansed and cleared, it's no longer opaque, but crystal clear. That little ping just translocates through the water, just like that. But most people's bodies are very opaque. It's like mud instead of clean water. So as we cultivate the body to be more open, empty, spacious, then we get more and more response from whatever we're doing with our mind and our intention. And so the slightest little releasing down, the slightest little intending down, the slightest little hanging out, relaxing, it can immediately can be sensed, this echo, this return wave, and we get better and better at opening up the body to allow that return wave, and then we're stood up by that return. I don't have to hold myself up, but that takes a lot of internal resources and physical transformation to be the proper vehicle for that to occur, and to track that, to allow it, intend it, and track it. So part of where I'm going with this is that as we get better at letting everything hang and relax, and if you have a sense of that clarifying you, working with that more and more and more, and getting that return wave or that clarification of that emptying, lightening, opening, uprighting, then more and more everything can afford to relax more and more and more, including the pelvic floor. Any tension that we have anywhere is holding on to protect us, and or to simply hold us in position, hold us up. Once we have another resource, we have another technology, we have another methodology, another way of being, another way of aligning, all that old technology stuff, I need this to have structure. Eventually it realizes I don't need that for structure, and I don't need it for safety and alignment.
Right. Or, and you know, the emotional safety and alliance too, right? So do you feel like, so it was interesting for me to explore the idea of being contracted and holding myself up. And then when I felt the energy coming up, do you, like for me, sometimes I feel, well, and I used to, you know, feel denseness around when it would travel, right? But then as it comes up, do you ever, it's like it goes right into my face. Like, do you, and up, like, does it just keep going up? Because I can feel it actually, it almost feels like it fills my mouth sometimes. Like it's just all going from when I do that.
The releasing of the energy and the moving of the energy, you feeling going,
Mm-hmm.
is that you feeling the release? When it's released, it can move into that area.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's moving up. Like sometimes though, you know, it'll, when I'm feeling it come, when I'm releasing and I am feeling it coming up, which is a really nice feeling in relationship to holding it from a tense perspective, right? But I can feel it kind of move up. And then I know that I have some spots that are really tight, but they're getting better. I can feel that. But then I can feel the energy kind of move up. And it's kind of funny because it feels like this just kind of air fluid that just kind of keeps moving up and as it's finding its way to travel. Like,
Okay.
right?
Okay, interesting. So, and if you characterize it as air and fluid, those are good signs. What I would so this is very interesting. What I would say is those are, as basically you're saying, really what you're saying is that these are, I would say, releases and releasing through denseness, if not
Mm-hmm.
not blockages, literally blockages. So just how you're describing it, I would say that those are uh, fairly major and fairly physical releases, and,
Mm.
and opening of meridians, chi rivers. So that's good. Now, if you ever, we always need to have to make sure we have a certain amount of downing or yin.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right.
we move into being lightheaded and that kind of thing.
Gone. Yeah.
So part of the Ting is you start to realize, okay, how much, okay, this is getting a little bit too much of only yang, rising and moving, and I need to allow more hanging or more seating.
Right. Right.
Staying present in your body and present with those energy experiences to see if you need to counterbalance that at all. So, and feel free to let me know if you feel comfortable about doing so, depending on if it's in a group or what have you. Let me know when you're experiencing those things, or if you have any questions about it. But you know what I would say is that that's really good energy movement that's being triggered and allowed to happen. And again, on a fairly strong physical level. I would say that's not specifically the rising I'm talking about.
Okay.
So that's really interesting and good that this came up. I'd say that those are the results of, again, clearing pathways and moving energy that needs to be moved and working through denseness. So that's very good. The returning wave or the echo,
Yeah.
something that's more inside. It's more inside and it's more it's less of a so for example, when you're describing this, it's almost like being flushed in the cheeks. You probably even were flushed, and you can just feel that in your tissues, right?
Mm.
That, would that be accurate the way you were describing it?
Um,
Was it kind of being even almost flushed?
Not then, although there are times where, we talked about the pairing and you feel kind of vibrant in that. This more feels like it's like I can feel as if it's like I can feel it move up, but it's inside, like it's closer to my spine.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So it's deeper in the body.
It's deeper in the body. Yeah. It's not external. No, it's more internal.
Okay, okay. So that's very good. So that's even deeper, and I would say that's even better. Um, and did you experience it as like kind of like a gush or a surge?
Not this time, although it's more like it's just kind of it's got an even flow to it. Like it just kind of
Well, that's
just starts coming up. Yeah. So it's not like a geyser or anything. It's more just a traveling up.
that's more stable. So that's good.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I do, there were times where, I would feel like before Tai Chi too, I could feel the energy, but I felt inside, but it would feel like it was hitting blocks. And so it'd be like more like hitting different areas as it moved. But now it feels like it's more fluid. It's not hitting as much. I mean, it's still obviously tight, but not where it used to be so tight. And it's moving differently now.
Well, that's tremendous. Yeah, that's very powerful and good awareness. So ultimately, Tai Chi
But
is,
not the echo if we're talking about it.
but that's where we're headed, and
Mm.
all things are happening leading towards that. Ultimately, Tai Chi is all about releasing,
Mm.
emptying, and releasing. And so when you're noticing those changes, that is huge. And it just gets, I'll say more and more, I'll say more and more subtle,
Mm.
but also more and more clear. So that's kind of the differentiation I was making that may or may not apply to what you're experiencing is rather than it feeling it in, like you're saying, was maybe deeper than what I originally was thinking. So that's even deeper. And I mean that deeper along the path as well, deeper in terms of being aware of the energy. Um,
Yeah, and when when we've talked about the Michelin Man, it's very different because it's more like a bubble around me. Like it's kind of here and out. Like it's like everything, well, and inside, but it's more like it's all filled, like versus what just happened now, which was a more linear path.
So the difference between being filled and this, what you're talking about now, is more of a linear path.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and those are two different manifestations of qi. And so continue. So yeah, really feel good about how this is happening for you, and continue to allow and intend this process of being more sensitive, developing your Ting, and Song, which is the releasing. So the two major principles and qualities of Tai Chi are Ting, which is inner listening or knowing, inner sensing, and Song, which a lot of people will say is relaxation, but that's not the best word. A more accurate word would be releasing.
Mm.
Those are the two main aspects of Tai Chi: developing Ting, developing Song. internal awareness, internal knowing, and releasing. So those are big steps that are happening with you and for you with that. So feel good
Yeah, the
about.
releasing is certainly a bit of a journey, because I think I started in very unreleased place. So, so.
Yeah, definitely most of us are. Absolutely. Now, the one thing that, again, is quite interesting, different with, or specific with Tai Chi and Qigong, is whatever release there is, you can bring in, at first it's consciously, even intellectually, bringing in a opening and expanding. So again, releasing is not this. So without this other awareness of the yang aspect, releasing can be this.
Oh yeah.
So whatever release that you experience, make space, make allowance, make space for the activity and opportunity of expanding and opening. So that's the difference between relaxation and release.
Just collapse more.
Relaxation doesn't have the outward vector, or doesn't have the yang direction. That's between relaxed and release. So whatever release you can have, sense that, or it might already be a sense of expanded openness, emptying and openness, or you may need to intend that. Because if it's releasing to a good extent, causing a drooping, then you have to place that intention in there of opening, expanding.
Opening.
So that's more subtle with the Ting and the intention. Yeah. So I just seeing here that we're almost.
Oh.
And normally Zoom gives this indicator. Oh, you know what it is? I bet I know. So I saw it on the TV. In the United States, it's Thanksgiving.
Oh, they're going to give us some free time.
Yeah. And so it might be on that same system. Oh, okay. For some reason, the timing is coming up now. Okay, so.
That's good though. We covered, I mean, we didn't get to what you wanted to, sorry, but that covered a lot of interesting things that I've been.
Yeah, no, I'm more interested about. Yeah, more interested in what comes up in class and what can be addressed organically and spontaneously in class. So this was great. And really encourage you to ask questions along this line in other classes as well, even if it's not just you and I, because it leads to material and theory and understandings that kind of set the ground for other people. They may not be experiencing these things yet, but it gives them a sense of the landscape in the Tai Chi world and what Tai Chi ultimately is about.
Right. Because it's so, there's so many things that at some point I'd like to explore, around Taoism and around how that relates to, just living, as Cheryl and I were talking about, there's that, that being in our world. And so some of the Taoist philosophy really interests me too, but, we haven't really had the chance to explore that too much, but, at some point we may get a chance to, so.
Yeah, we've even done, I remember one time we did a Tai Chi, Tai Chi weekend retreats. One retreat, its theme was the Tao Te Ching. So we spent the whole weekend reading a passage from the Tao Te Ching, discussing it, contemplating it, and then doing some Tai Chi inspired from that feeling. But yeah.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
Like that is always good to approach things from different angles. So that's maybe one thing I'll just leave it with, is that I find extremely valuable, and it's something that's organically helpful. That this idea of this opening and emptying in correlation with the releasing. See if you can bring that into whatever releasing that you notice.